Hello and welcome to today's presentation on big data. My name is Nicholas Sharon, and today I'll be applying big data to the Organization for the Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA. First, we're going to do an overview of big data and what it means. Big data is big, it is chaotic, and it is fast, which may seem odd, but that is really the best way to describe it. When we say big data is big, what we mean is that it encompasses all of the data an organization collects, from the smallest levels to the largest levels. Anything that that organization is collecting and storing is going to be found within their big data architecture. When we say it's chaotic, it means it comes in a number of different formats: structured, semi-structured, and unstructured. It could be anything from a social media post to an interaction, a like on a certain post, clicking on an ad, sales numbers, geographical locations. Any type of information that is data can be found in the big data architecture. And finally, it's fast. But big data is growing every moment of every day, and an organization's big data is never stopping from growth. It is constantly having inputs put into it from every sale, from every interaction online, from every interaction on their social media platforms. It is always growing, and it does not stop. The challenges to big data today are data integration, data volume, the availability of analysts, and the cost of implementing a big data solution. When we talk about data integration, we're really just bringing all of those data, all the data that exists out there into one set and really normalizing it so that way when we're using it in a big data sense, all of these items can be relationed together and build relationships upon it. Data volume is literally what it says. It's the scale, the size, the amount of data, and how are we going to turn that into something valuable. Availability of analysts is just our team members have the skills to be able to use this data, to analyze it, to build solutions based off it, or does it just exist out there for no reason? And finally, the costs. It's always going to be expensive. It's always going to cost a lot of money in order to implement a big data solution and to build your big data architecture from the ground up, but is that cost worth it? And depending on the size of your organization, how high does that cost go? The best practices for big data as it relates to the Federal Emergency Management Agency really comes down to the two primary, as Kimball and Ross discuss. Focus on the user interface simplicity and performance, and integrate separate data sources with conformed dimensions. Focusing on user interface and simplicity is vital for FEMA. They're doing this and they're analyzing their data and they're using their data in very stressful situations, so it needs to be easy to use on the ground through mobile devices, through limited technology that they have in these often austere environments. And then integrating separate data sources with conformed dimensions. Organizations at the state, local, and federal level need to have conformed dimensions so that we can bring all these separate data sources together to actually provide actionable items based on that information and based on that data that is out there. When we talk about data governance and how we can apply data governance and data integrity to FEMA, it's really about adapting the best processes or the best practices for big data and big data governance and integrity to this organization and to the organizations that they deal with. The first of those, as Kimball and Ross discuss, is big data governance does not exist. There's no magical key for big data governance. It starts at the smallest level of data. And if you don't have good data governance at the smallest level, your big data governance will be flawed. Your big data will be flawed. And you cannot start that solution at the top. You have to start at the bottom. Next is that data governance must exist for all data before its use is determined. So we can't be collecting data out there and say, well, we don't have to go back through and make sure that it's accurate and that it's being used correctly or that it exists as it was actually collected, because once you determine its use, it already needs to be valuable. You can't go back and check it for accuracy and everything. So anything that is collected and stored must be, we must maintain that accuracy and we must maintain that level of data governance right at that key level as the moment of collection and storage. Next is data privacy is key. Anything that we are collecting that relates back to a person's personal identity, their personal identifiable information, it must be protected through encryption at either level, whether it's when you're pulling the data or when you're storing the data. We have to protect our customers' data. In this instance, it may be social security numbers, maybe geographic locations, or if they receive federal assistance, rather important data. And finally, we cannot prioritize big data over data governance. So regardless of the value that big data will bring into your organization, if you do not have proper data governance, that value does not exist. You cannot start a big data program without already having data governance in place. And then how are we going to organize it? For FEMA, I believe that Kimball and Ross, and through Kimball's dimensional modeling, it really calls for a hub and spoke corporate information factory architecture. I believe that this allows FEMA to have the fragmented data that they're definitely going to run into with data marts and departmentalization, but it also calls for the necessary items that they would need in order to make this data actionable and make it usable, and that's that dimensional normalization of the data and making sure that people are identifying data correctly, identifying their values correctly, so that way when it comes time to use, it's ready to go, and there isn't that additional cleaning phase that needs to be done as they collect data from multiple different departments at every level of the government. That's big data today, and that's how big data can be used by the Federal Emergency Management Agency. If you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to me. You also see a list of references on the final page, and have a great day.